The Winter Belt. A far-lost adventure. Written and narrated by John Miro. 52. Before Usher laid down his fork from his last bite, Tyson reached out for his dishes. Again showing off unfair dexterity for a man the size of a tank, Tyson's large fingers grabbed cutlery and dishes in one go. "Military training's showing," Usher joked, suppressing a groan as he got to his feet as well. "Hospital corners and spick-and-span tables." Usher walked to the sink, grabbed a cloth, and walked back to clean the table. He found himself turning around slowly to keep the world from wobbling. Tyson nodded. "That, and I'm still undercover. Cherry gives me a lot of latitude, but I have to get back." Usher remembered Olson promising to wait for him. This reunion was probably best kept short on both sides. He returned the cloth to its dish. On contact, it began to fizz and break down everything he'd wiped off of the table. "Okay, back to business," he agreed. "Want to explain how the guard plans to use a street gang to take over Locklaw?" "Not to take over," Tyson corrected in a distracted tone, closing the fridge door and leaning against it. "Destroy. The top guns aren't taking any chances." In a sick way, all the Sky Cities owed their freedom from the dragons, who created the cities, to the Guard. Dropping nukes on the roads that united the cities hadn't been a humanitarian gesture. It had been a precursor to taking over the cities for themselves, but it had worked. Usher snorted. "We're talking about the 38s, not an invasion fleet." Tyson grimaced. "They're closer than you might think, Nicodemus." Usher folded his arms against a sudden chill. "Are we talking nukes? Biologicals? They won't target infrastructure." Tyson gave a half shrug. "They want to move in. Locklaw's an irreplaceable resource. They'll target ideology." Usher's mind started rolling through possibilities. Terror campaign? Assassinations? Tyson nodded. "Eventually, we think. I don't know the time scale, but both are likely. The Winter Belt kept them out after 3 failed invasion attempts. If the Guard wants to keep expanding, which every organism does, it needs a new strategy." "Embrace and extinguish worked pretty well with Haven SG, Nick growled. Locklaw had driven out the dragons by promising full citizenship in a democracy for all that fought for them. Once the slave masters were gone, the city kept the new bosses out with the same promise. In Sur and Braha Sky Cities, criminal elements pushed the dragons out, then created a sham government to keep the Guard out. No new bosses, but no democracy, no real citizenship or safety or security for its people. Somewhere in the middle was Haven, which fought off the dragons but hadn't been able to fight off criminal empires, eventually accepting the Guard and added the SG to their name. To Usher, life under a corrupt regime didn't look any better than under a military dictatorship. And we just opened the door to diplomatic relations with our fair sister city. Tyson's eyes gleamed. That was unlucky. But now their plans for the Haven SG ambassador are on hold, thanks to the misfortune of Hascom Heliocentric Lab 6. Usher's forehead wrinkled. "The new arrival," Tyson amended, easing his confusion. Usher chewed his lip, swallowing his annoyance at how much Tyson was enjoying this big reveal. He'd only done a few undercover cases as a cop, but they'd all played with his mind a little, so he cut the big guy some slack. He couldn't even imagine what it felt like for Tyson to be on the run and undercover at the same time. Slack or no, Usher was in the mood for some straight answers. "Thought you were in a hurry, Tyson." He rubbed the back of his neck. "And my pain patches are obviously not dialed right, so how about we cut to it?" Tyson sighed, but then his eyes crinkled with concern, and the guard officer looked him over appraisingly. "You've seen the news feeds of these stealth assets in orbit burning hard for HHL's, for the new arrival?" Usher nodded. "Which is burning hard for the belt." "Sensibly," Tyson added. "The Guard wants it. Capture order came from Admiral Robeson himself. Pissed off some of his inner circle, too, pressing pause on a long-planned embargo of Locklaw. Now they were getting to it." "Embargo?" Nicodemus asked. "To force us to negotiate. For what? Peer access? Official recognition for the Guard?" Tyson nodded. "Two good guesses, but you'd have to ask Admiral Gomersall to be sure." The political pundits on the news feeds had been warning about that since a surprise reversal of public opinion and political will had led to Ambassador Gomersall being recognized. Hell, Usher thought, his history teacher at Peertown High had warned him and his classmates about system guard gunboat diplomacy a lot of years ago. And here we are, with a puppet ambassador from Haven SG, a former system guard officer. They weren't even trying to be subtle. So Plan A is on hold while Robeson chases his golden goose? It's more of an obsidian goose, Tyson said, then saw Usher's blank stare. The ship possesses some sort of stealth tech, and seems to have partnered with an Eternal to escape the thorn that trapped them both upon arrival. Usher shook his head. Forget that. There's always a weird alien or weird tech. Why are you here? Tyson's eyebrows drew together. To stop the guard from destroying Locklaw. I get it, but you said that plan's on hold, so why are you with the 38s? Why didn't you bug out after this new arrival changed things up? Firstly, I wasn't supposed to be sent. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Just like Salah. Nick heard the name, knew Salah was Tyson's brother, but filed that away and let Tyson continue. Tyson's voice got quiet at the mention of his brother, and a small, sad smile crept onto his face. But the big man's eyes quickly refocused on Usher. After you loaned me Willer, I headed for the belt. Got recognized as system guard, got in a bit of trouble, and someone got me out of trouble, in exchange for which they asked me to do this job for them. Tyson shrugged. These people took a risk in approaching me, but it appears they needed someone with my skill set sooner than they expected. Usher squeezed his eyes shut against the growing pressure behind them. Because? Because the guard may have put their plan on hold, but Gomersall didn't. Usher rubbed his closed eyes. Again, you know this because? He just had Counselor Cree murdered, Tyson said, standing. Usher's eyes flew open in shock, then half shuddered against the pain of the light. Cree? How? When? In his apartment on the wall. Tyson answered, reaching for a dark jacket where it hung by the stovetop and pulling it on. Made quite a show of it, too. Staked him to his own bedroom window and wrote Quisling on it with his own blood. Usher tracked the man as he walked back to the table, tugging a small pack from an inside pocket. He was corrupt as the day is long, but I'm assured he was no traitor. Usher groaned and rubbed the back of his head, which was spinning from more than pain now. A city councilor murdered, and his reputation stained as a puppet of the dragons? People get scared. Bad things happen. After the arrival, Roland Bird, and the warehouse fire. Usher snapped his eyes back up to Tyson again. Was the fire planned too? No, but they couldn't have planned it any better. To have Jane, embroiled in the loss of millions, belonging to so many of Locklaw's powerful on both sides of the law? That's going to cause trouble. How is Jane, by the way? Tyson dragged a small patch from his pack and held it out to Usher. System guard issue analgesic. Usher only realized how bad he hurt when he grabbed the patch without any further questions. Let me worry about Jane, he all but snarled, and then felt bad about it. Thanks, he muttered as he peeled off the backing and stuck the patch under his shirt on the right side of his chest. By the time he'd straightened out his shirt, the patch was already hitting him. He stared at Tyson, eyes suddenly wide and alert. Tyson grinned. Did the trick? Usher nodded, smiling with relief. The smile dimmed as he remembered what they were talking about. You got a plan, Tyson? Tyson sealed the front of his jacket and barked a deep, happy laugh. Hell no. I'm here to embed with the 38s, observe and report back. Usher asked the question that had been on his mind since meeting Tyson 2.0 in the alley with Cherry. Report back to who? Tyson smiled, but it didn't extend all the way to his eyes. Would you believe me if I told you I don't really know? Usher snorted. That sounds like half an answer to me. The pain had been reduced to a distant echo already. We can unpack that another day. We're keeping in touch, he demanded. Of course, Tyson nodded. Anonymized accounts, dead drops, and meeting times are uploaded in Willer. Also a transfer code with enough loot to cover your daily rate for a month plus expenses. Usher got to his feet. It didn't send a shockwave through his spine, but they still shook. He began to suspect the jurd nurse had been right about not leaving the hospital just yet. "Now wait, I don't even know what you're doing. I'm not signing up just because you ask." Yes, you are. Tyson gently clapped Usher on the shoulder. "Because you're one of the good guys." He tugged on Usher's collar. "And because you need some new clothes." Usher laughed weakly. "Why the hell is it good to see you, Tyson?" The smile on the ex-system guard cop's face did reach all the way to his eyes now. "Why the hell is it good to see you too, Nicodemus?" Usher's walk back off the pier to the street was a blur. The pain was dim, but the rest of him felt pretty dim too. Olson's cop car was still parked just out of sight from pier access. Usher's legs just got him into the car. He didn't hear what Olson said, but from the look on his face, it had something to do with Usher looking like death warmed over. Usher was pretty sure he thanked the man and several different species deities before he lost consciousness in the passenger seat. You have been listening to Far Lost, The Winter Belt. Learn more at servingworlds.com. Thanks for listening.